Hi, I'm Jordan. You might know me from Board Game Breakfast, where I define really obvious board game terms, or from the hit Instagram account, Jordan Plays Blue, where I do quickly reviews and some other shenanigans. 2020 was a really awesome year for games. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It was so good. I was complaining with Randy and Ellen last night about how hard it was to come up with top 10 games. I could have come up with a top 20 games, and it would have been a really solid list. So to start off, I wanted to talk about some things that I really like in games, because I feel like my list is probably different than the typical BGG crowd. So I just wanted to go over that real quick. So one, I am most attracted to light or family weight games. I do like some games that are a little heavier. Those are more exceptions than it is to the rule. So I do like lighter games, family weight games, games that are really kind of accessible. I also like games that are quick and have a low barrier of entry. You won't really see many heavy Euro games, really convoluted, really big Ameritrash type games on my list. I just don't get them played, and sometimes they're just too long. I also want a game to look pretty, and I want it to have really nice production value. Nice and easy. And then lastly, I really enjoy games that have a solid mechanic puzzle to solve, okay? So a game that can have some luck, but I really do prefer games that have strategy and tactics in it that give me some choice, that what I'm doing in the game actually means something. So that seems pretty obvious, but just wanted to go over what I kind of like in games. So let's get started. So the first game on my list is New York Zoo. This is the latest Polyomino game from Uwe Rosenberg. He did other games like Patchwork, Cottage Garden, Indian Summer, Spring Meadow. Those are similar polyomino games. In this game, you're also drafting tiles and putting them on your board. The primary twist in New York Zoo is that you are going to be filling spaces on your board, but also filling those tiles with zoo animals: Arctic foxes, kangaroos, flamingos, all the stuff that you see in a zoo. And periodically these animals will breed and fill in more areas on your board, and then you can turn those in for bonus tiles and such like that. So this breeding really brings it a step up in strategy and complexity, and it just really makes the game sing. So New York Zoo, number 10. So I mentioned earlier that I love games that they kind of give you a puzzle to solve. And Shifting Stones is a game that does this in spades. It is pretty much straight puzzle game, all right? So in it, there's a grid of double-sided tiles. You're going to put them out on the table, and on your turn, you discard cards from your hand in order to swap the spaces of those tiles, that you're going to be switching the spots. You're going to be turning them over to the other side. That shows a different color. And you're hoping to meet the positioning of tiles for one of your scoring cards in your hand. It plays really quickly. It's one of those games that you finish and you want to try it again. It also has a really cool solo mode that's just kind of almost feels like a button shy game, like a micro game, in its simplicity and how quickly the solo mode goes, so you can just kind of play it over and over again. So, Shifting Stones, number 9. Whistle Mountain is easily the heaviest game in my top 10 this year. It's probably more of a medium weight kind of worker placement game, but it has a lot of components, a lot of setup, and it kind of makes you think that it's a heavier game than it really is. But ultimately, it has a really simple engine. You place one of your airships on a space around the board, and then you take its actions, or you take all your airships back and you get to build on the board. The coolest part of Whistle Mountain is how the tiles that you're building on the board, you're going to have these machine tiles and these scaffolding tiles, and they become the worker placement spaces throughout the game. And those are going to evolve throughout the game, between games, because you're not always going to see every machine every game. And so the game is constantly evolving. You're going to have to use different strategies every time you play. And because the actions vary, it just makes for a really cool, just the whole framework of the game is really cool. So I really enjoyed Whistle Mountain. That is my number 8. Cosmic Colonies is number 7 on my list. This is another polyomino game. All right, so in this game, you're going to be playing cards to boost actions. And whenever you take your actions, you're essentially collecting resources or buying these polyomino tiles. You're putting them on your board. That's supposed to represent like a planet, asteroid type thing. You're covering different types of terrains on there with these space buildings, I guess. I'm not totally sure. But the cool part, a couple cool things about the game is whenever you play these bonus cards, you're then going to pass them to your neighbor. And so and then you get a card from your neighbor also. So the cards are constantly rotating around the table. If you have a really good card, your neighbor's going to have it next time, and then their neighbor's going to have it next time. And so those cards are going to keep passing around, kind of sharing the wealth, sharing the love of these cards. But ultimately has a really simple engine, really easy to get into. I really love it. That is Cosmic Colonies, number 7. All right, my number 6 game, Camp Pinetop. This is a light worker movement game where you're going to be playing as scouts on a camping trip. You're going to be moving around the forest, trying to achieve goals to collect merit badges. It's super cute, super charming. It has a really similar engine to Ticket to Ride. So you're drafting these colored cards, and then you're going to collect sets of the color cards in order to complete objectives around the game, right? And so the sets that you're collecting, though, are going to constantly be changing as your workers are on different spaces on this grid board that's out there. And then as you're moving through the merit badges and moving through your ranks, you're going to be collecting different sets, almost collecting sets of sets at certain points, which is really cool. It all comes together really interestingly. It's really accessible. It's really cute. That is Camp Pinetop, number 6. The Crew. It's been everywhere this year, and I think rightfully so. It's a trick-taking game. It's cooperative, and the players around the table are working together to complete these increasingly difficult missions. You're going to try to do tricks that have certain cards in them, do tricks in certain orders. Different people can only take certain cards, that kind of thing. I wouldn't say it's a particularly innovative game because trick-taking games already often use teams, and so that's kind of pseudo cooperation anyway. But I think the idea that these missions that you're accomplishing are really short. You're only doing one hand per mission, so you can play it as many times as you want in a row. And it provides you a different puzzle each time. And it's super satisfying, and it's really awesome whenever you can get like a couple of these tricks, a couple of these missions linked in a row together perfectly. I really enjoy it. That is The Crew, number 5. All right, we're entering the final 4 now. So this year, AEG has been just knocking it out of the park. It's great games year over year, okay? So this year we had Truffle Shuffle, we had Mariposas, we had Calico, Santa Monica. All right, they're all great releases from them, and they just keep turning them out for me. I love it. So Santa Monica is my number 4. This is a tableau building game where you're collecting cards to build up a beachfront boardwalk. And these cards are going to provide you with new workers that you're going to be moving around your tableau, different ways to score points at the end of the game. Sometimes they're going to have symbols on them, and depending on how you collect these symbols, you'll also be able to score points. It comes together really well. It's a game that after you finish, you're thinking about what you did wrong and wanting to do better the next time. It makes for a lot of really interesting and difficult decisions, and it's one that I really enjoyed. That is my number 4 game, Santa Monica. All right, my number 3 game is Fort. Fort is a cool deck building game from the company Leader Games that gave us Root and Vast, which I also really enjoy, but those are much more complex games. Those almost feel like you're playing a new game every single time because you're learning a bunch of different factions, and each faction plays differently, and there's all sorts of rules and all sorts of stuff going on. Fort is a much more streamlined, it's a much more focused game. It gives a couple nice twists to deck building though. So each card is going to give you 2 different actions, a top action and a bottom action. The top action can be followed by other players. Sometimes you have to discard a card that matches the symbol. It's similar to an older deck building game called Eminent Domain in that way, which I also really enjoy. The other twist is that the cards that you don't play in the round go face up on the table in front of you, and the other players have a chance to draft cards from your cards. And so these are all friends, your kids, you're building this fort, doing different things, eating pizza, playing with toys. And so if your friends don't feel like you're playing with them enough, they can defect to other groups of friends, which thematically is super fun, but also really tough to decide, hey, if I don't want to play this card right now, Rachel might take that card from me, or somebody else might take it, and I might not see that card again unless they put it out there and then you take that card. So a lot of fun. You're constantly having to make those tough decisions, and the engine in it is really smooth. The artwork is fantastic. I love this artwork. It fits super well. Has the same artist as Root and Vast, but with kids and with kind of that playground feel, it just works super well. That is Fort, my number 3. So Sonora, yeah, it's got that gimmicky flicking thing, but to be honest, it really works, all right? So the flicking gives you a different way to randomize things. Instead of using cards or dice that most of these kinds of games use, you're gonna be flicking onto this board. It also gives a nice spatial aspect to that part, you know, where your disc lands is where it's going to go, right? So ultimately, though, this is kind of a roll and write game in which you're completing different sections on your board. There's 4 different kind of puzzle sheets on here that you're trying to complete in different ways. And so it comes together really interestingly. I think each of these sections could be its own roll and write game, but by combining them all together, it makes the game much thinkier. It makes the game much, you know, sometimes it's a little hard to wrap your head around, but it makes for a really interesting and challenging game. I really enjoy it. That is Sonora, my number 2 game from the year. All right, my number 1 game of the year. What could it be? It's Calico. This was hands down the easiest decision of this entire list. Calico is so good, okay? Calico is a straight puzzle game. You're going to be building quilt pieces that have different colors and patterns on them, and based on how you place them on this quilt board, different cats will come and sit on your quilt. You get to sew buttons on them. There's also these objective spaces that you need to build certain tiles around. And with all of these different things happening, you're not going to be able to accomplish everything you want. And so it's one of those games where you have to constantly make these difficult decisions, constantly wrap your head around how this space is going to affect different things on your board. It's a different challenge every single time I play it. The production value is off the charts. It has these double layer boards that your quilt pieces are going to fit into. Things are glossy where they don't need to be glossy. The cardboard is super thick. The artwork is really charming by Beth Sobel. It's the complete package. It's a game that I do so poorly in, and then I want to play it again because I want to do better. And it's just one of those games that just kind of captured me, and I just think about it and how to do better next time. And frankly, it's just easily my favorite game of the year. It's a game that I'm going to be playing years to come, and it's another one from AEG, and they just keep knocking them out. All right, so there you have it. Those are my favorite games from 2020. There were another 10, 15 games I could have put on the list that I also super enjoyed. I'll make a slide about those in a second. But if there's any other games that you think fit in line with these games that you think I might enjoy, I know I've missed probably a ton of games from this year because, you know, I didn't get to play with game groups and do all that kind of stuff. But I'm really grateful to be able to have played all of these awesome games. I hope you can check them out too. But yeah, I think that's it, guys. All right, I'm Jordan. Thanks.